Hello and welcome. My name is Brian Leatherwood. I am the pastor of House of Refuge Apostolic Church in Manville, and I welcome you to this lesson. What I'm doing is I felt compelled to take about 4 weeks here to teach on a series of lessons, and the title of this lesson is Trusting God with the Unexplained. And trusting God with the unexplained is something that we all must learn to do. We all would like to learn to do because we're all going through stuff. We all go through things that we can't explain and we have questions. We have to learn that there is a reason that God allows us to go through things. There are things He's doing in our lives. And I think that this series of lessons might help you if you're going through something, struggling with some things, to kind of get a better understanding of what God might be doing in your life and what He's trying to perfect in us. And so I want to urge you for the next 4 weeks to join me. And this is actually a Bible study that my wife had taught. And we had obtained this lesson from a woman who had written this Bible study and put it together. And if you're interested in getting a copy of this material, just please reach out to me on our Facebook page, and I can get this for you. So I'm going to start with the very first lesson this afternoon, and the title of this lesson is Trusting God in Dothan. Trusting God in Dothan. And the Bible shows Dothan as both a portrait of suffering and as a portrait of mighty deliverance. And sooner or later in the lives of every believer, these two Dothans are going to come. So Dothan was mentioned only twice in the Old Testament, just twice. But it was significant in the lives of Joseph and Elisha, the prophet Elisha. So let's look at Joseph's experience first. And this is a very familiar story to many people, the life of Joseph, about how his brothers hated him. They were jealous of him because of favoritism shown to him by his father. And so they had envy and jealousy within their hearts. And so, but one day it says that Joseph came, and Joseph met them at Dothan. Let's look at Genesis chapter 37, 17 through 20. In Genesis 37, 17 through 20, it says, And the man said, They are departed hence. For I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. When they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. If you recall the story, Joseph had dreams of his brothers bowing down to him. And so, come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. And we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. So they hated him, and so they conspired to kill him, and that's what they did. They stripped him, they cast him into a pit, and they sold him into slavery. And so this Dothan was a portrait of suffering, of betrayal, and tragedy. And it started a new course in Joseph's life, many years of suffering. So that was the first portrayal of Dothan in the Bible. The second one is the experience of Elisha, prophet Elisha. And we know that this is a very familiar story as well, because Elisha was being used by God God was telling him where the Syrians were gathering to attack Israel. And God would show him, and he would alert the king. He would tell the king of Israel, this is where the Syrians are. And so Israel would be prepared to come against the Syrians, and they would win the victory. And so they determined, the Syrians figured out that, the prophet was telling about them, and God was showing them. So they came together, and they said, starting in 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 13 to 23. And he said, Go and spy out where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. Therefore sent he thither horses and chariots and a great host, and they came by night and compassed the city about. So they went out and they surrounded the city where Elisha was. When the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, Alas, my master, how shall we do? What are we going to do, Elisha? We're surrounded. And he answered, Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes, that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mount was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. When they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto the Lord and said, Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness, according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said unto them, This is not the way, neither in this one city, but follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And he led them to Samaria. And it came to pass, when they were coming to Samaria, that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men, that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw. And behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. And the king of Israel said unto Elisha, when he saw them, My father, shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? And he answered, Thou shalt not smite them. Wouldst thou smite those whom thou hast taken captive with the sword and with the bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink, and go to their master. And he prepared great provision for them. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syria came no more into the land of Israel. So the great victory was there. God blinded the Syrians, the Syrian army. And Elisha was able to lead them like children into the city of Samaria, which belonged to Israel. And so there was a great victory that day. The Syrians were led as captive, and Israel won the battle. So for that day, Dothan was a portrait of mighty deliverance, because the bands of Syria came no more into the land of Israel. So there are two Dothans in every life, in every one of our lives. These two Dothans, there's going to be glorious interventions. There's going to be glorious victories when God will be to us a God of deliverance, and he will save us and bring us out. But other times, we're all going to see bare blue skies and empty hillsides, nothing but a pit. We'll look down and we just feel like we're in a pit. So, given that, there is one question that has destroyed the faith of many people. And that one question is simply this: why do bad things happen to good people? Why do bad things happen to good people? And we are troubled by the unfair distribution of suffering in this world, and the realization that life is not fair. It's just not fair. Question marks can turn into hooks that dig inside our hearts, that pierce our very soul. Why, God? Even the wisest man who ever lived was bewildered by injustices. King Solomon. And King Solomon asked in Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 7, he said, I have seen servants upon horses and princes walking as servants upon the earth. Injustice. It didn't seem right. And the suffering of godless, evil people, it doesn't present a mystery to us. We see that, and we see that they are just reaping what they sow, or at least that's what we believe anyway. It just seems to be right when evil people suffer. But Paul told us this. He said in Romans chapter 8 and 22, he said that we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. So when you think of 17-year-old Joseph, that's how old he was when his brothers betrayed him, when he was thrown into that pit and imprisoned. He's 17 years old, but he was sheltered by his father. He was a young man with dreams. He was trying to do right and endeavoring to live according to God's will for his life. He had a strong adversity to sin. He was not inclined to sin. He trusted. He certainly must have had been mystified when his dreams, his hopes were crushed by what had happened to him. Surely, I can't explain this, God. The Bible says in Romans chapter 8 and 28 says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. We know all things work together for good to them that love God and that are called according to his purpose. Many years later, Joseph said of his Dothan experience, he did not speak of it bitterly, but he said of this in Genesis chapter 50 and 20 through 21. But as for you, you thought it evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is in this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. Joseph didn't have bitterness in his spirit, but he understood why God had allowed it. What you meant for evil, God meant for good. And if Joseph had let Dothan make him bitter, 70 souls would have had nowhere to go in their hour of desperation. The family of Joseph would have starved. They would have no rescue. Even the world itself would have been in terrible shape. The plan of salvation would have been in jeopardy, as the ancestry of the Messiah was in danger of extinction by starvation, because he came through Joseph's and his family's lineage. There's nothing that can happen to me as a child of God that God cannot use. Nothing. George Meredith said this. He said, there is nothing the body suffers that the soul may not profit by. And I like this quote by Vesta Mangan. She said, make the devil sorry he did that to you. And anything that draws me closer to God, anything, no matter how tragic, no matter how terrible it might be, anything that draws me closer to God is working to my overall benefit, because it's bringing me closer to him. So we have to ask the question, why suffering? That's what people ask. Why suffering? Why hardship? Why pain? Why pressure? And there are two traps that we can fall into if we're not careful. Two traps of thinking. The first trap is, the more you suffer, the more spiritual you are. That's a trap. The more you suffer, the more spiritual you are. Well, that's not really a biblical principle. And the second trap is this. And Paul wrote about this in 1 Timothy 6 and 5. He said, supposing that gain is godliness. Supposing that gain is godliness. And so the thinking that proceeds from that is, if one is suffering, they must be out of the will of God. And that is not a biblical principle either. And so even the disciples thought that way. They thought that way. If you're suffering, you must be out of the will of God. You must be a sinner. And they were confronted with the blind man in the Gospel of John. And in John chapter 9, verses 2 through 3, they asked a question to Jesus, and they counted this blind man. They said, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind? That was the thinking that pervaded men. Jesus answered, neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. This man wasn't being punished. He was just going to be a vessel that God would use to demonstrate the glory of God. But suffering is no respecter of persons, is it? Sun shines impartially on the evil and the good, and the rain falls on the just and the unjust. And pain overtakes without discrimination the saint and the sinner alike. The scales never balance on this side of eternity. They may never balance. They might, but they may never balance on this side of eternity. But they will balance. They will balance. Psalms 34 and 19. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all. That's a verse of scripture we should all take to heart. And though the Lord delivereth him out of them all, we have to say like Job did in Job 14 and 14. All the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change come. Till my change come. Psalms 30:5 says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Joy comes in the morning. And 1 Peter 5:8, Peter said this, 1 Peter 5:8, verses 8 through 10, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour, whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. But the God of all grace, who has called us into his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after that you have suffered a while, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, settle you. After you have suffered a while, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, settle you. If we allow them, suffering, adversity, and trouble can draw us closer to God, give us a revelation of him, and make us more effective in our service to him, and create in us a new heart, a new understanding, and even a new destiny. Or they can make us bitter, faithless, indrawn, engrossed in our tragedies, and counting our injuries with self-pity and self-accusation. Paul wrote from prison to the church at Thessalonica in 1 Thessalonians 2:17 and 18, but we, brethren, being taken from you for a short time in presence, not in heart, endeavored the more abundantly to see your face with great desire. Wherefore we would have come unto you, even I, Paul, once and again, but Satan hindered us. Now, Paul could have grown bitter over this. He could have pouted and regretted what could have been to help the church at Thessalonica. But he didn't. And instead, in Philippians 1:12, sitting in a prison cell, Paul wrote this, but I would you should understand, brethren, that the things which happened unto me have fallen out rather into the furtherance of the gospel. For the furtherance of the gospel. These things I've suffered, these things I've had to endure, these things I've had to put up with, and sitting in a prison cell and false accusations and betrayal and beatings and long weary nights, not knowing. They've all had a purpose to the furtherance of the gospel. The root word for witness is a word which means martyr. The word martyr is a term that talks about someone that's willing to lay their life down for the cause. What is the significance of this? And one of those significant things about this is that it is a process that we are being broken and we are being brought to a place where we die to our will, so that the Lord can heal us and the Lord can deliver us and the Lord can show us who he truly is. And so we die to our will and we allow the things of life to come to break us, but that's so the Lord can put us back together and make us whole in a brand new image of him. Philippians 1:20 says this, so now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether it be by life or by death. Either way, Christ is going to be magnified in me. Suffering will do one of two things to us. Suffering will either put a window or a mirror in one's life. A window to become, or a mirror rather, to become preoccupied with self. Or a window to feel for others and to see and to understand what they're going through. It's our choice. Ezekiel wrote in Ezekiel 3:15, he said that I came to them of the captivity. I came to them that had been taken captive by Babylon and were suffering and under bondage. He said, I sat where they sat. I sat where they sat. 2 Corinthians 1:4 says this, who comforteth us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. We go through things, and God works in our lives so that we in turn can comfort others that have been through adversity. Suffering can give us sympathy, empathy, and compassion that is born only from the womb of experience. And the things you go through will enable you to minister to people because of the suffering, because of the compassion and the empathy and the sympathy that has been born in your heart. And you're able to love them and to help them like nobody else can. 1 Peter 4:12 says this, Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. It's not strange. It's not strange, that fiery trial. But rejoice inasmuch as you are partakers of Christ's sufferings. I'm partaking in the suffering with him, that when his glory shall be revealed, you may be glad also with exceeding joy. Exceeding joy. Paul, who suffered the loss of all things, penned these words. Romans 8:18, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. The things you're going through, as difficult and hard as you're going through, I hope that you would in faith reach out and grab a hold of this and believe what this verse says when it says that what you're going through is not worthy to be compared with the glory that's going to be revealed in us. It's going to be so powerful. And they could write these words. Paul could write these words because very few people have suffered like Paul. Paul suffered greatly. But he could write these words because he understood the weight of the glory that awaited him. And it was so powerful. It was so awesome. It was greater than any amount of suffering that he was going through right now. And Lazarus, who was a close friend of Jesus, Lazarus, he was sick. He was sick. And so they sent word to Jesus, come, your friend is sick. Please come and pray for him. But Jesus delayed going. He did not go right away. He waited. In fact, he waited for 3 or 4 days. Then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I'm glad for your sakes. I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. That's in John chapter 11, verses 14 through 15. He said, I'm glad for your sakes. I'm glad that we did not go, to the intent that you may believe. Can you imagine the confusion? He said, I'm glad for your sake. I was not there. And he came and he wept with them at the cemetery. He knew what was about to happen. He knew it was for their good. He knew it. He knew their faith would soar like never before. However, like a parent hurting along with a baby who's getting a shot, even knowing the outcome is for the ultimate good, he still felt their pain with them. And of course, we know that story where he walked up to the grave of Lazarus and said, had them roll the stone away and said, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus came up out of the grave after 4 days of being dead. And it was a great, great victory. But sometimes it's what precedes is unexplainable. It's unexplainable to us. At one point, Jesus told his followers, he said of his actions, he said, what I do now, thou knowest not now. You don't know what I'm doing right now, but thou shalt know hereafter. That's in John chapter 13 and 7. And our sufferings, what a difference it would make if we could only remember this one thing. You don't know what's happening now, but there's coming a day when you will know. It will be very clear to you. And we will either be Satan's trophy or a monument to the grace of God. What will you be? What will I be? Jesus said offenses would come. He also said there would be earthquakes, famines, pestilences, and tearful sights, that some shall be hated and betrayed. But he said in Luke chapter 21 and 10 and through 17, he said, but it shall turn to you for a testimony. It shall turn to you for a testimony. I just want to exhort you here today as we complete this first lesson of trusting God with the unexplained. Trust God in your Dothan, and he will carry us through. We will start another lesson Hope you tune in for that. God bless you.